A long time ago, in the vast lands of West Africa, there reigned a king named Nair Magan. This king ruled over Manding, a powerful and respected kingdom. One day, a mysterious hunter came to the palace, bearing a strange prophecy. He said that Nair Magan would have a son who would become a more powerful king than any before him. This son would unify the kingdoms of Manding and establish a vast empire. Soon after, the prophecy came true. Nair Magan's second wife, Soumaoro Kanté, gave birth to a boy named Soundjata. But there was a problem. The young prince was born with a great weakness. He could not walk. He remained stuck on the ground, unable to move his legs. In the palace, everyone mocked him. How could this child become king when he can't even stand up, they said. His stepmother, Soumaoro, who dreamed of her own son, Soumaoro, becoming king, despised him in particular. She insulted him publicly, mocking his condition and calling him weak. His mother, Soumaoro, watched this humiliation with sadness and helplessness, while the king, though sympathetic, remained silent in the face of his stepdaughter's cruelty. She would sometimes even physically harm the child. Years passed, and Soundjata was still unable to walk. However, he had grown into a tall boy, loved by everyone, serving others. As his half-brother, Soumaoro, gained more and more importance, Soundjata was rejected by almost everyone except his mother, Soumaoro. Every night, she sat by him, encouraging and comforting him. She whispered words of hope, reminding him of the prophecy and his destiny. She believed in him, despite everything. She would say, "One day, my son, you will stand and walk. Destiny has spoken for you." One day, a terrible threat befell Manding. A sorcerer king, named Soumaoro Kanté, from Soso, began invading neighboring kingdoms. With an army of determined men, he moved from village to village, leaving a trail of destruction and despair behind him. Soumaoro was cruel and ruthless, and his reputation preceded him. He not only conquered, he enslaved entire villages, tearing children from their mothers and forcing men to work for him under inhumane conditions. The cries of the villagers echoed through the valleys, while houses burned, and the land was ravaged. The inhabitants, terrified, fled at his approach, but he pursued them mercilessly, capturing those who dared to resist. Terror settled in the hearts of the people, and each passing day seemed darker than the last. Manding, once vibrant and prosperous, was in great danger, and the people desperately sought a leader who could save them from this growing threat. Meanwhile, Soumaoro, who skillfully manipulated the kingdom's affairs, continued to ridicule Soundjata and his mother, Soumaoro. With a haughty smile and a contemptuous attitude, she took every opportunity to belittle the young prince, mocking his inability to walk and calling him the cripple in front of the court. She ensured that rumors of disdain surrounded him, fueling whispers and consolidating her influence as the king's stepmother. Soumaoro didn't hesitate to use her status to exert pressure on King Nair Magan, insisting that Soundjata was unworthy of becoming king, claiming that his disability was a curse for the kingdom. She surrounded herself with loyal courtiers who shared her animosity, and together, they conspired to keep Soundjata and his mother in the shadows, isolating them from others and undermining any attempt to rehabilitate the young prince. Every public humiliation was a victory for Soumaoro, who found satisfaction in Soumaoro's pain. Though often in tears and despair, Soumaoro continued to support her son discreetly, sending him messages of love and hope. But the cruelty of Soumaoro weighed heavily on their hearts. This atmosphere of tension and disdain only widened the gap between Soundjata and those around him, but Soumaoro persisted in believing in the prophecy and the destiny awaiting her son. One evening, as night wrapped the kingdom in its dark veil, Soumaoro, her heart heavy with worry and despair, quietly slipped into her son Soundjata's room. The stars faintly shone through the gaps in the sacred baobab branches, standing majestically outside. She approached him, her voice trembling with conviction. "My son, it is time. Take this iron cane and stand up. Show everyone that you are the chosen one." Soundjata, his gaze downcast, replied with pain in his voice, "But I can't, mother. My legs are too weak." Sogalin, tears in her eyes, took his hands with strength and determination. "Listen to me, Soundjata. I swear on my ancestors that I never knew another man but your father, and that I always respected and revered him as God commands. So believe me, you will rise." These words resonated within him, a glimmer of hope beginning to shine in the darkness. With a deep breath, Soundjata approached the sacred baobab, a symbol of strength and wisdom. Slowly, he grasped the cane, holding it firmly in his hands. In an extraordinary effort, he stood, his trembling legs supported by the cane. The silence of the night was palpable, each second stretching out. It was a magical and dramatic moment. For the first time in his life, Soundjata stood up, defying the doubts and mockery that had always surrounded him. The echo of his courage resounded under the baobab, an act of rebellion against the destiny that had tried to hold him back. Soundjata returned to the village, walking with newfound determination. Word of his feat spread quickly throughout Manding. The people, amazed, rushed to greet him. The people of Manding were stunned. The lame child, who had suffered so much, had just risen and walked. It was a defining moment, a sign of renewal and hope, and it was only the beginning of his transformation. Sogalin, tears in her eyes, a mix of pride and relief, watched her son. She knew this was just the start of his ascent, a promise of a future where he would fulfill his destiny. Shortly after, King Nair Magan died, and as expected, Dankaran II took the throne. However, his weakness was evident. He lacked the strength and determination his father had always embodied. Inexperienced and hesitant, he didn't know how to defend his kingdom. As the crown weighed heavily on his head, a dark threat loomed on the horizon. Soumaoro Kanté, the sorcerer king, heard of Dankaran's vulnerability. In his power-hungry mind, he saw an opportunity not to be missed. Soumaoro hastened his conquests, launching attacks on neighboring kingdoms with unprecedented brutality. As he approached the borders of Manding, fierce battles erupted across the empire. In the north, south, east, and west. Each clash was carnage, and Dankaran's armies, poorly prepared and poorly led, lost thousands of men. Their cries of despair echoed through the air heavy with fear. Soumaoro, relentless and merciless, terrorized the people. He ravaged everything in his path, reducing entire villages to ashes and making the fertile lands weep. His troops used the scorched earth tactic, leaving a trail of destruction behind them. Crops were pillaged, wells poisoned, and the inhabitants, gripped by panic, fled in all directions, lost in the darkness of the night. The people's faces were marked by terror and desolation. Children cried, women desperately searched for their lost husbands, while the elders murmured prayers to their ancestors, hoping for a miracle to save their kingdom from this scourge. Manding, once so powerful, was now in the grip of overwhelming despair, anxiously awaiting the emergence of a leader capable of breaking the cycle of violence. In the meantime, Soundjata, now able to walk, grew in strength and wisdom. His steps had led him through several kingdoms, where he forged strong alliances with respected chiefs and warriors. His reputation grew, and his name became famous throughout West Africa, evoking hope and resilience. As a great leader and formidable strategist, he learned the tactics of war and the arts of diplomacy, forging bonds that would be crucial in the trials to come. However, within Manding, the situation became increasingly desperate. Dankaran, unable to defend his kingdom against the growing anxiety and Soumaoro's relentless attacks, fled. In the turmoil, he abandoned his throne, leaving behind a terrified people seeking protection. The inhabitants, trapped between fear and despair, turned to Soundjata. They remembered the prophecy that foretold he would be a great king, one who would unite the kingdoms and end the tyranny. In him, they began to see their last hope, a guide capable of freeing them from Soumaoro's yoke. Whispers of faith in Soundjata circulated in every corner of the kingdom, promising a better future, a light in the darkness that enveloped them. Soundjata accepted to return, and with determination, he immediately engaged in the battle to free his people. This was what became known as the Battle of Karina in 1235. However, despite his efforts and the courage of his men, Soumaoro's troops were more numerous and better trained. The situation seemed hopeless, and the tumult of battle echoed across the plain, where dust rose into the hot air. Fakoli, commonly known as Fakoli Kumba, was a warrior who had initially fought on Soumaoro's side. However, his loyalty was betrayed when Soumaoro took his wife, a pain he could never forget. Harboring a desire for revenge, Fakoli decided to side with Soundjata. In an act of bravery and solidarity, he revealed a crucial secret to Soundjata. One of Soumaoro's wives had confided in him about the sorcerer's weakness. Fakoli then gave Soundjata a special arrow, explaining that if Soundjata managed to shoot Soumaoro, the sorcerer king would lose his powers. Soundjata, his heart pounding, carefully aimed the arrow at Soumaoro. Time seemed to freeze as he released the bowstring, and the arrow whistled through the air, hitting its target. Soumaoro, dismayed by this unexpected attack, fell from his horse like an ordinary man, realizing with horror that his power was vanishing. Trying to flee, he bolted in the opposite direction, but it was already too late. Soundjata's men, driven by bravery and rage, quickly caught up with him. In a final battle, they surrounded him, putting an end to the sorcerer king's tyranny. Soundjata, now a strong and confident man, rode a majestic horse, his impressive stature captivating all who beheld him. His face radiated pride and determination, a symbol of hope for his people. As he advanced, the crowd gathered around him, cries of joy and acclamation ringing out, "Long live Soundjata, the Lion of Manding." Children ran beside him, their laughter echoing in the atmosphere of celebration. Upon his arrival at the palace, Soundjata dismounted his horse and confidently walked toward the throne, a figure commanding respect. Sogalin, his mother, stood by his side, her heart filled with pride. Her eyes glistened with tears of happiness as she watched her son, now a respected and admired leader. She remembered the nights spent encouraging him, instilling hope in him, and believing in his destiny. When Soundjata took his place on the throne, a wave of applause and shouts of joy filled the room. The nobility and villagers gathered to greet him, their respect and admiration palpable. Sogalin, standing by his side, felt immense pride. She knew that this moment represented not only the fulfillment of a dream but also the promise of a bright future for Manding. The memories of Soundjata's struggles, his trials, and his determination blended with the celebration. Sogalin was proud to see her son soar, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. She knew he was destined to unify the kingdoms and build a just empire, a legacy that would endure through the ages. Together, they looked toward the future, united in the joy of this historic moment. Soundjata became a great administrator, a visionary who transformed Manding into a prosperous empire. He developed trade, gold mining, and introduced new crops, including cotton, revolutionizing agriculture in the region. Aware that the wealth of his kingdom depended on the productivity of its lands, he implemented innovative farming methods, allowing farmers to thrive and ensure a stable supply of food. Under his reign, the political and administrative organization of the subject peoples was strengthened. Soundjata established a solid military organization, ensuring the empire's security and stability. The chiefs of his armies, honored for their loyal service, were installed as provincial governors, creating a leadership network that connected the center to the periphery. This system allowed for efficient resource and population management, fostering regional development. In addition to his military exploits, Soundjata was also known for his wisdom. His tolerance and respect for the different beliefs within his empire allowed for the peaceful coexistence of Islam and animism. This inclusive approach strengthened ties between the various communities, creating a climate of peace and harmony. At the end of his life, Soundjata, the great king of Manding, felt the weight of the years and the battles he had fought. One day, as he stood by the Sankarani River, a deep sense of peace washed over him. He remembered his victories, the alliances he had forged, and the legacy he had built for his people. However, the sadness of a tired king quickly faded away. Unfortunately, fate struck with unexpected cruelty. In a tragic moment, Soundjata fell into the deep waters of the river. The news of his drowning quickly spread, plunging Manding into immense grief. His people, who had depended so much on his strength and wisdom, were devastated by the loss. Soundjata was buried near the river, not far from the sacred baobab, the same tree that had witnessed his first steps. This baobab, a symbol of strength and resilience, became the guardian of his memory. The villagers gathered to pay tribute to their beloved king, sharing stories of his exploits, his wisdom, and his leadership. Flowers were laid on his grave, and prayers were offered, strengthening the bond between the past and the present. The Sankarani River, which had witnessed so many stories, continued to flow, reminding all that the spirit of Soundjata lived on in them, inspiring future generations to follow in his footsteps.